over the next days and weeks, we're going to see on our front pages the Battle of the Donbass. It's going to be brutal. And what I want to have a chat with you about on this sunny London morning, and good morning to you, and good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. Don't watch this before bedtime, because this is probably a pessimistic video. But what we're going to chat about is the big picture that you should keep in mind as we witness the Battle of the Donbass in our telephones, in our computers, and our newspapers. First thing that's worth reminding ourselves of is that Putin wants to reformat the international order, and he can't do that because nobody will let him. He wants a sphere of influence for Russia in which it can do what it wants. He wants NATO to be reformed or disbanded. He wants the West to radically rethink its conduct on the international stage. He wants the sanctions to be removed and Russia to receive an apology for being neglected. He's not going to get any of that. And while he might be able to sell the war ongoingly to the Russian population by declaring small victories, and he will do that on the 9th of May when Russia celebrates its victory in World War II, and on that day it's increasingly fascist, pointillistically totalitarian, authoritarian leader will go on about how he is successfully bombing its neighbor in a way that to its neighbor feels indistinguishable from the Nazi invasion in 1941. But that'll happen, and he'll declare that Ukraine has experienced a degree of denazification, whatever that means. He'll declare that the Ukraine has been partially demilitarized. He will declare that the rescue operation in the Donbass has been successful, if he possibly can get away with saying that. And that just means that he conducted this war. He'll tell the Russian people not to change the regime in Kiev, which is now impossible for the foreseeable future. But that in fact this operation was all about rescuing folks in the Donbass who were fake victims of fictional crimes by fictional Nazis. But he'll actually have a harder job selling the war to himself, because he wants to reformat the international order, and he won't be able to do that. He can't win. And that will be a contributing cause of potential future escalation he engages in. But moving beyond this point, we've got a really thorny dilemma. And that's that if Putin does really, really badly and experiences military defeat in the Donbass battle, he will not stop the escalation. If anything, he will say, this just proves that I am fighting against NATO. That's why I'm losing in this Ukraine war, because it's not a war with Ukraine. And I knew I was fighting against NATO. This means that I'm really fighting against NATO, and it's time to escalate. The problem we've got is that the opposite scenario, where Putin stops doing so disastrously and has a modicum of success in the Battle of the Donbass. If that happens, if things go a little less badly for him, a little better for him, that also won't stop him from escalating. And why is that? It's because this is not just about Ukraine. Even full regime change in Ukraine wouldn't have been enough, and Putin is getting nothing like it. So it will be difficult for Putin to stop, even if he manages to achieve a bit more than it looks like he can now. And what does this mean? It means that the proposals you're hearing from many quarters to make more concessions to Putin so that he at least stops and goes back into his box, that's not a viable proposal. And we've got this problem that the worse Putin does, the more he'll escalate, and the better Putin does, the more he'll escalate. And it's very important, therefore, to acknowledge that we don't have any kind of key that we can turn to put this problem back into its box. What's the correct approach? Well, the correct approach is about evaluating nuclear risk while supplying Ukraine militarily as hard and as fast as possible, and doing everything to globally, with as big a global alliance as possible, to isolate the Putin regime. One of the central aims here is to bring it about that the Russian people are more likely to see a future without Putin, which at the moment they don't. The Russian people see no future without Putin. And they've also got to see clearly that there is no future with Putin. This is very, very far from the picture we've got today, but we've got to push the situation in that direction. And the way we do that is probably not by making concessions and not by sort of standing back and allowing Ukraine to give its best go with minimal support. It probably means maximally supporting Ukraine short of direct military engagement with Russian forces, and it means maximizing our alliance against the Putin regime globally and making sure that the differences in Europe, the different speeds at which Europe is waking up to the global threat that the Putin regime poses, we've got to continue evening out these differences, and some countries are particularly behind on this, and we know that Germany is at the moment. And so I think that's all for the moment. We're going to do a really, really, really big Q&A soon because I've got so many wonderful questions that I've received. We're also going to do an announcement in the next day or so about the mission of this channel and how you can support it. Well, not this channel, the other channel, or really all the channels. There's always going to be a main channel, and we might have one or two subsidiary channels like this one where we do all kinds of interesting and more casual things. Lots of love. Talk soon.